Canada's new export law has slammed the brakes on U.S. agricultural shipments, shaking up farmers and businesses across America. This rule demands tougher food safety checks, including strict quarantine, detailed pesticide testing, and full traceability from seed to shipping. Every load now needs new permits and inspection certificates, which sounds like a win for Canadian consumers but feels like a punch to U.S. farmers. Experts suspect this is no accident. It's retaliation amid rising U.S.-Canada trade tensions, targeting states that rely heavily on exporting crops like corn, soybeans, and dairy. The fallout is huge. Processing plants are slowing down, trucks sit empty, and layoffs are hitting rural communities hard. States are scrambling to find new markets or negotiate fixes, but the damage is real. Which states are suffering most? Stick with us to uncover the full impact. Watch till the end. Like and subscribe for more. Number 7, Iowa. Iowa, America's heartland of corn and soybeans, is reeling from a devastating economic blow sparked by Canada's new export law. Once a top buyer of Iowa's farm goods, Canada imported millions of tons of crops and processed products yearly, with trucks crossing the border seamlessly. But now, just weeks after the law's rollout, everything's changed. Strict new rules on food safety and traceability demand detailed proof of a product's journey from farm to factory. Many Iowa shipments are being rejected for missing paperwork or failing quarantine checks, piling on costly testing and licensing fees that are crushing profits. In just 1 month, Iowa's exports to Canada have plummeted by over 40%, leaving warehouses overflowing and local crop prices tumbling by up to 25%. Farmers are selling at a loss just to clear space, while planting plans shrink over fears of unrecovered costs. Factories, from soybean crushers to feed producers, have slashed output by 20 to 40%, with some shutting down or cutting shifts. Jobs are vanishing. Truckers, factory workers, and seasonal laborers face layoffs or reduced hours. Small towns are hurting as stores, gas stations, and services see sales drop. Experts warn that if this continues, Iowa could lose hundreds of millions, risking farm bankruptcies and a broader economic slump. Is this Canada's retaliation in a brewing trade war? The clock is ticking. Number 6. Nebraska. Nebraska, nestled in America's farming heartland, is reeling from a 1-2 punch as Canada's new export rules slam its crops and livestock. Unlike Iowa, hooked on corn and soybeans, Nebraska thrives on a mix of beef, dairy, and grains. Canada, a key buyer of Nebraska's beef, milk products, and grains for food and feed, has tightened the screws with strict regulations. These rules demand extra paperwork on animal tracking, quarantine, and seed origins, causing chaos. Beef and milk shipments are getting rejected, certification costs have skyrocketed, and delays are spoiling products. Grain exports are stuck too, with demands for details on fertilizers and pesticides. The fallout is brutal. Local beef prices are crashing from oversupply, forcing ranchers to shrink herds or sell cheap to survive. Slaughterhouses and processing plants are cutting shifts or closing. Corn and wheat piles are growing, profits are tanking, and farmers are scaling back planting. Hundreds of workers in meat, dairy, and transport are losing jobs or hours. Local shops, logistics, and farm suppliers are hurting, and banks are tightening loans, worried about farmers' ability to pay. Without a trade fix or federal help, Nebraska's farms face a grim winter, and a regional recession looms as losses ripple into other industries. Number 5. Wisconsin. Wisconsin, America's dairy heartland, is in deep trouble, and it's got everyone on edge. Known for pumping out cheese, butter, milk powder, and whey protein, the state's dairy industry is a cash cow, or was, until Canada slammed the door with a tough new export law. Wisconsin's farms and factories have long relied on Canadian buyers for a huge chunk of their income. But now, strict rules on quality and tracking are holding up shipments or blocking them entirely. Canada's also slashing imports to boost its own dairy, leaving Wisconsin's cheese exporters reeling with losses as high as 50% in weeks. Milk prices have crashed to historic lows, and small farmers are drowning in debt, unable to pay for feed or workers. Many face closing their gates for good. Factories are stuffed with unsold cheese and milk powder, while processing plants are cutting jobs and hours. Entire towns, from feed stores to diners, feel the pinch as money dries up. Banks are getting nervous, tightening loans. If this drags on, Wisconsin could lose its dairy crown, hurting not just the state, but America's place in North America's dairy game. Industry groups are begging for federal help, fast to negotiate with Canada and save farmers with emergency aid. Will Wisconsin's dairy legacy survive this storm? Number 4, Minnesota. Imagine a bustling Midwest state, a powerhouse of grain, suddenly stuck in a tough spot. Minnesota, famous for its golden wheat, corn, and soybeans, is facing a crisis sparked by Canada's new export rules. These crops, feeding both the US and markets abroad, rely heavily on Canada as a key buyer. But now, strict regulations demand extra paperwork and quality checks, clogging up the supply chain. Trains and trucks are stranded at borders for weeks, jacking up costs. Exporters are losing contracts, paying hefty fines, and watching their reputation slip. The ripple effect is brutal. Local grain prices are crashing due to oversupply, forcing farmers to store crops longer, risking spoilage and racking up storage fees. Trucking and rail companies are bleeding revenue, with drivers and crews facing cut hours or layoffs. Small towns tied to farming are staring down economic gloom as the state's tax revenue takes a hit. If this mess isn't fixed in 3 to 4 months, experts warn Minnesota could lose its edge in Canada's market and its standing in North America. What's next for this grain giant? Number 3. North Dakota. North Dakota, a key U.S. state nestled along the Canadian border, is reeling from a major hit to its thriving soybean and wheat industries. Known for feeding the world with its massive grain harvests, the state is grappling with a new Canadian export law that's shaking things up. Canada, a longtime buyer of North Dakota's soybeans, wheat, and processed grains, now demands tougher tracking rules and stricter quarantine measures. This has caused shipments to pile up or get turned away at border points like Pembina, Portal, and Northgate. Delays stretching days have spiked transport costs, leaving farmers and businesses struggling. Prices for crops have plummeted 20 to 25% this year as Canada, a vital market, slips away. Storage facilities are overflowing, racking up extra costs, while exports of wheat and grains have nosedived. Cooperatives are slashing purchases, and processing plants, transport firms, and warehouses are cutting jobs or hours. Border towns reliant on trade are seeing shops and services take a hit. If new markets aren't found soon, experts warn production could shrink, threatening farmers' livelihoods and North Dakota's global agricultural clout. The Farmers Union is pushing for urgent talks with Canada and financial aid to keep farms afloat. Can the state rebound from this crisis? Number 2. South Dakota. Imagine a place famous for its massive herds of beef cattle, rolling fields of corn, and golden waves of wheat. This state feeds not just its own people, but also sends boatloads of fresh beef, processed meats, and grains to Canada, a major buyer. But here's the twist. New rules from Ottawa have thrown a wrench into this bustling trade. Now beef shipments need extra paperwork to track where every cow came from, plus tougher quarantine rules that slow things down and jack up costs. Grain exports? They're stuck too, with demands to prove every seed, fertilizer, and pesticide's origin, rules so strict many shipments can't even leave. The fallout is hitting hard. Beef is piling up, crashing prices, and forcing ranchers to shrink their herds or sell cheap just to cover feed. Meat plants are cutting shifts or shutting down. Corn and wheat are stacking up, tanking prices, so farmers are planning to plant less next season to avoid being buried in surplus. Jobs are taking a hit too. Workers in meat processing, trucking, and farm services are seeing fewer hours or pink slips. It's a ripple effect shaking up lives and livelihoods. What happens next? Number 1. Illinois. Imagine a state buzzing with fields of golden corn and soybeans, not just growing crops but turning them into valuable products like soybean oil, ethanol, and animal feed for the world to use. This place was a champion in sending these goods across borders, especially to Canada. But then, new rules from Ottawa slammed the brakes on this thriving trade. Now every shipment needs strict proof of where the crops came from and how they were made, making everything slower and pricier. Deals with Canadian buyers? Many are paused or gone. Factories are slowing down, leaving the state's supply chain in a mess. The ripple effect is hitting hard. Farmers in central and southern Illinois are earning less as crop prices plummet. Plants making ethanol, oil, and feed are cutting shifts or shutting down temporarily. Truck drivers, port workers, and seasonal laborers are losing hours or jobs entirely, leaving rural families struggling. What started as a trade hiccup has spiraled into a full-blown crisis, shaking the heart of this farming state's economy. Can this vibrant region bounce back from this unexpected blow? Picture a trade storm brewing between the US and Canada, where new Canadian export rules are hitting hard, like a punch to the gut of America's farming heartland. This isn't just about food safety, it's a clever move in a tense trade fight, targeting states like Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North and South Dakota, and Illinois. These places are losing money, jobs, and shipments fast. farms, factories, and trucking companies are struggling, leaving rural towns in trouble. If this lasts another few months, experts warn of massive farm failures and thousands jobless. Can the U.S. save its farmers and fight back in this trade war?